She was flossing her teeth when she said it. Not crying, not apologizing, just flossing, like we were talking about a grocery list. "You'll get over it," she said, turning slightly to spit into the sink. I was standing in the doorway holding the shirt that still smelled like someone else's cologne. It wasn't mine. It wasn't even subtle. There was a time I might have collapsed, or screamed, or begged. But in that moment, I just felt hollow, like my body had forgotten how to hold weight. I looked around the bathroom, noticing for the first time how nothing in it belonged to me anymore. Her lavender shampoo, her rose gold hairbrush, her travel-sized moisturizers that she never took on any of the trips she said were business only. She looked at me through the mirror like I was the one being unreasonable. "Don't make this dramatic, Lyle," she added, pulling the floss tight between her fingers. "It wasn't even about you." I didn't respond. I just placed the shirt gently on the counter like it was evidence in a trial that wouldn't happen. Downstairs, the dog stared at me like he knew something big was about to shift. He was right. I walked past him, opened the coat closet, and took the only jacket she hadn't accidentally donated during her minimalist phase. I slipped my keys into my pocket, one by one, slowly, like I was buying myself time to feel something. But I didn't. Not until I grabbed the door handle. That's when it hit. Not sadness. Not rage. Something worse, clarity. She didn't break my heart. She'd been quietly filing it down for months, until there was nothing left but splinters. So I opened the door. I stepped out. I left everything, even the dog. And 5 hours later, I found something on her laptop, something that made me realize this wasn't just about cheating. It was so much darker than that. I wasn't planning on going back. I didn't even know where I was driving, to be honest. I just knew I needed to be moving. But 4.5 hours later, I was parked 2 blocks from our house, hands shaking over the steering wheel, staring at nothing in particular. That's when the panic hit. Not because I missed her, but because I realized how much I didn't know. What else had she hidden? How long had I been the fool in the room, pretending everything was fine? So I did something cowardly. I waited until I knew she was gone. She had this yoga thing she never missed, which I'm now certain was never about yoga. I walked back into the house with a spare key I hadn't returned yet. It was eerily quiet, like even the walls were holding their breath. The air still smelled like her shampoo. Everything was in place, like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't walked out of this exact door with my heart bleeding into my shoes just hours earlier. But this wasn't a nostalgia trip. I wasn't here to wallow. I went straight to her desk in the corner of the dining room, where she kept her silver laptop, the one she never let me touch. To my surprise, it was still open, still logged in, almost like she wanted me to see something. Or maybe she'd finally gotten sloppy. Either way, I wasn't going to waste the moment. I opened her messages first. Most of it was harmless, until I found a chain labeled "Work Crew Wine Glass" that didn't look like any corporate thread I'd ever seen. It was casual, playful, but beneath the jokes and memes were coded phrases, hotel references, late-night debriefs, and nicknames that made my stomach turn. One message in particular stood out. It was from a guy named Benji, a name I didn't recognize. He wrote, "Tell Lyle we're just colleagues if he ever asks. He's too soft to question it." I froze. Not because of the betrayal. I'd already swallowed that pill, but because she'd talked about me with him. About how naive I was. How easy it was to lie to me. I kept digging. Her calendar was filled with entries that had nothing to do with consulting work. Meetings at places we'd never been together. Repeat events labeled with single-letter codes. But what finally broke me, what made my knees buckle, was a folder on her desktop. It was named Just Stuff. Inside were dozens of screenshots. Of me, sitting at my desk, reading in bed, making dinner, even asleep. Some were time-stamped at hours she claimed to be out of the house. My first thought was that she was documenting me for some reason. My second was worse. She was showing me to someone else. And I was right. In one of the photos, I saw a chat window open beside it. The message read, "He still thinks I love him. It's actually kind of sweet." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just backed away from the desk like it was radioactive. I left everything exactly as I found it. And as I stepped back into the cold night air, it finally hit me. She wasn't just cheating. She was studying me, watching me like I was some kind of experiment. Like she was keeping me around not out of guilt, or fear, or love, but amusement. And that's when I knew. This wasn't the end of a marriage. This was the beginning of something way darker than I ever signed up for. Driving away from that house again didn't feel like freedom. It felt like escaping a fire you only just realized you were standing in. I wasn't even sure how long I'd been burning. The farther I got, the colder I felt, like all the warmth I'd poured into our life had been vacuumed out and replaced with silence. That folder on her laptop haunted me. Screenshots of me doing nothing extraordinary, just existing. But that was the thing, wasn't it? She didn't need to catch me doing anything. I was the proof, the joke, the prop in her story. The fact that she saved it all in a folder called Just Stuff made it worse. That title was casual, dismissive, like my whole life with her was a side note in her real story. I ended up pulling into an old diner on Route 47. I used to come here back in high school when I wanted to avoid going home. Funny how years later, it still felt like a safe place to fall apart. I sat in the back corner booth and ordered pancakes I couldn't eat. The waitress asked me 3 times if I wanted coffee. I said yes every time, but never drank it. I was too busy scrolling through her digital life on my phone. Yeah, I emailed the folder to myself. Call it pathetic, call it obsessive, but I knew, deep in my bones, that something didn't add up. This wasn't a regular affair. This wasn't about passion or boredom or even falling out of love. This was something calculated. That's when I remembered something strange. 2 months ago, a package had arrived for her. She'd rushed to the door to grab it, which was weird, because she usually had me open her mail while she was cooking. But this one, she snatched it like it was radioactive. I remember joking, "What? Did you order a secret second husband?" She didn't laugh. At the time, I thought I just had bad comedic timing. Now, I wasn't so sure. So I did something impulsive. I called our neighbor, Sandy. She was one of those nosy but sweet types who always had binoculars nearby, claiming she used them to watch the birds. Birds, sure. She picked up on the second ring. "Lyle?" she asked, surprised. "Did you forget something?" I told her no. I just needed to know if any packages had come for Jeanette recently. I expected her to brush me off. Instead, there was a pause. "Actually," Sandy said, her voice lowering, "a guy's been dropping stuff off. Not in a delivery truck, just his own car. He never uses the front door. Always goes around the back." "A guy? Using the back entrance of my house?" I asked what he looked like. She said he wore sunglasses even at night, always had a hoodie on, and drove a black SUV with no plates. No plates. I felt something crack inside my chest. "Sandy," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "Next time he shows up, can you call me? Right away?" "Of course, honey." I knew something weird was going on. When I hung up, I realized my hands were clenched so tight, my knuckles were white. This wasn't just about her betrayal anymore. She wasn't just seeing someone. She was hiding someone. And worse, she was preparing for something. Something I hadn't even begun to understand. Sleep didn't come that night. I spent it sitting in my car outside a 24-hour laundromat with the engine off, watching my own breath fog up the windshield. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face in that bathroom mirror, looking back at me like I was the one who'd done something wrong. Like I was the fool for expecting anything more than the bare minimum of honesty. Around 4:30 a.m., I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I needed more. Proof. Context. Leverage. Or maybe just closure. Something real to grab onto before my whole past dissolved into fog. So I drove back to the house. For the 3rd time in 24 hours. I parked a block away, threw up my hood, and waited behind the neighbor's hedge until I saw her car pull out of the driveway. Probably off to yoga. Or yoga. I had 20, maybe 30 minutes. I went around the back, careful not to trigger the motion lights. I still had my key. She hadn't changed the locks yet. That felt insulting in its own right. She didn't even think I was worth locking out. Inside, the house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. It felt like walking through a museum of my old life. Familiar, but sterile. I went upstairs, not to our bedroom, but to the spare room we never used. The one she used to call her project space. The door was locked. That stopped me cold. It had never been locked before. I knew she kept things in there. Craft stuff, supposedly, but we'd barely touched that room since we moved in. I looked around, checked her usual hiding spots. The ceramic owl on the shelf above the TV? Empty. The bottom of the flower container in the pantry? Nothing. But then I remembered, the potted cactus in the hallway. She once laughed and told me, "If I ever need to hide something, I'll bury it in that plant. You'd never go near it. You're terrified of anything prickly." At the time, it was a joke. Now, It felt like a clue she'd never expected me to recall. I dug gently through the soil, brushing it aside with a spoon from the kitchen. And there it was. A small brass key, taped inside a Ziploc bag. My heart kicked against my ribs. I unlocked the door. The room was darker than I remembered, curtains drawn, air stale. And right away, I knew this wasn't just a craft space. Not anymore. There was a second phone, sitting on a desk that hadn't been there last month. A burner. Next to it, a stack of journals. Hers, based on the handwriting, but the dates didn't line up with anything I recognized. Most entries were coded, filled with symbols and half-sentences like, "Meet 3B Thursday. Don't forget red file. Avoid eye contact if he's watching." Test Lyle's reaction again. Again? My throat went dry. I flipped further through the pages. One entry, dated just 2 weeks ago, said, "He's getting suspicious. Might need to speed things up. Can't risk him looking into 3B. Who the hell was 3B? I tried the burner phone. It was locked. 4-digit code. I tried her birthday. Denied. I tried mine. Denied. Then I tried 0301. Our anniversary. It opened. There were messages. Dozens. Mostly from unknown numbers. One stood out. The most recent, timestamped just yesterday. "We move Friday. Tell him something that'll keep him quiet until then." Friday. That was 3 days away. And just like that, my stomach dropped. Because I realized something I hadn't considered before. This wasn't just about me being replaced. This wasn't just infidelity. She was planning something bigger. And whatever it was, I was never supposed to find out. The moment I realized I was being managed, not just lied to, a strange calm came over me. Like when you finally stop trying to fix something and start watching it burn. That's what it felt like, except I was still inside the building. I sat in that dark room with her burner phone in my hands, rereading the last message over and over again. "We move Friday. Tell him something that'll keep him quiet until then." That wasn't the language of lovers sneaking around. That was operational. Calculated. Like they were coordinating a transfer. I took photos of everything. Every notebook page, every message thread, even the angles of the room in case she cleared it all out later. I didn't know what I was going to do with the evidence yet, but I couldn't afford to lose it. Not now. Then I saw the red folder mentioned in her notes. It was tucked under the desk, nearly invisible behind an old printer. It wasn't labeled, just a plain file with a strip of worn masking tape across the top. Inside were printed documents, most of them emails and receipts. The name at the top of nearly every page was Benjamin Rhodes. Benji. The same Benji who'd texted her. "Tell Lyle we're just colleagues, if he ever asks." But there was more. Hotel bookings, car rentals, even a signed lease agreement in his name, with our home address listed under emergency contact. My jaw locked. My pulse was pounding so hard it made the edges of my vision shimmer. Why would this man be listing my wife as his emergency contact? Why would they have contracts together? One receipt in particular chilled me. It was a payment from a private security company for a deposit on something listed as on-site surveillance review and termination protocol. The amount, $8,500. What did termination protocol mean? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but it was getting harder to pretend this was still about cheating. This felt like a setup, like I was being slowly erased from my own life, and they were documenting the process step by step. Then I made a mistake. I heard her car pull into the driveway. She was back early. Too early. I had maybe 30 seconds to decide, hide and risk being caught, or try to slip out the back before she came upstairs. I chose the second. I shoved the folder back, locked the door behind me, and dashed down the steps, heart slamming against my ribs like a sledgehammer. As I reached the mudroom, I heard the front door creak open. "Lyle," she called out. Her voice was sharp, suspicious. I froze. She thought I might be there. She knew something was off. I waited until I heard her footsteps on the stairs. Then I slipped out the back door, cutting through the neighbor's yard like a fugitive. By the time I reached my car, I was sweating through my shirt, lungs on fire. But I didn't drive off right away. I watched the house. I watched her come to the window of that locked room with her phone to her ear, pacing, panicked. She wasn't calling the police. She was calling him. I didn't need to hear the words to know what she was saying. He knows. I just cracked open the first layer of something deeper than infidelity. Something that smelled like fraud, or worse. And whatever was planned for Friday, I knew I had to stop it. The moment I drove away from the house, I knew I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. I was already past the point of no return, and Jeanette, she wasn't going to just let this go. Not after what I'd seen. Not with Friday coming. And not with me now being the wild card in a plan they'd spent months, maybe years, quietly building. I didn't have friends close enough to trust. Not anymore. One by one, they drifted off over the years. Or maybe Jeanette pushed them away. I'd never thought about it until now. But I did know one person who might still be in my corner, my brother, Dane. We hadn't talked much in the last year, not since a fight over something stupid during Thanksgiving. But if anyone would believe me, or at least listen, it was him. I pulled into a grocery store parking lot, opened my laptop, and began compiling everything. Screenshots from the burner phone, photos of her journals, the lease, the emails, even the receipt with termination protocol printed at the bottom. I created a zip folder, encrypted it, and titled it Do Not Ignore. Zip. Then I sent it to Dane's email with a message that simply said, if something happens to me before Friday, start here. But I wasn't done. I created a second copy, deleted the metadata, and this time, I sent it to her, to Jeanette. No message, no subject line, just the folder. I wanted her to know I'd seen everything, that I wasn't clueless anymore, that the man she thought was too soft, too blind, too forgiving, wasn't sleeping through this anymore. I knew she'd open it. She'd panic. She'd call Benji, or whoever he really was. And that panic? That would be the thing I could finally control. I didn't hear from her for 5 hours. Not a call. Not a message. Nothing. But when the response came, it didn't come from her. It came from an unknown number, unlisted. Just one sentence. You made a mistake, Lyle. No name. No threat. No context. But it chilled me more than if someone had screamed in my face. Because now it wasn't just her. It was them. And they knew I'd seen it. I drove back to my apartment. Small, dim, barely furnished since I left in a rush. I locked every door, jammed a chair under the handle, and stayed up all night. Not watching TV. Not reading. Just sitting in the dark with a kitchen knife on the table and my phone clutched in my hand. Around 3:17 a.m., I heard a knock on the door. Not a bang. Just one soft, deliberate knock. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just waited, barely breathing. Nothing. No second knock. No voice. I crept to the peephole. The hallway was empty. But down the far end, near the elevator, I saw a figure in a gray coat and dark jeans stepping calmly into the stairwell. No rush. No panic. Like he knew I'd be watching. I should have called the police. But what would I even say? My wife's secret boyfriend might be planning something and possibly hired someone to spy on me because I found a burner phone? That would go over well. I called Dane. He picked up groggy, and for a second, I hesitated. But I told him everything. The files. The folder. The texts. The knock. And what he said next made everything feel real in a new way. Lyle, he said, voice dead serious now. Whatever this is, it's not just her. You're in something bigger than you know. You need to get out of town. Today. I can't, I said. Not yet. Not until I find out what Friday is. Because that was the only thing that mattered now. Friday was coming. And if I didn't stop whatever was planned, if I didn't figure out what Jeanette and Benji had really been building behind my back, then I might not get another chance. Not just to survive, but to prove I was never the fool they thought I was. I didn't sleep the next night either. The knock on my door haunted me. But what haunted me more was the calmness of the man walking away. Like he wasn't trying to break in or hurt me. Like he was just confirming I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't being hunted. Not yet. I was being watched. Monitored. That meant I still had time. Maybe not much, but enough. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for Friday to come to me. I was going to bring it to them. The last receipt in the red folder listed a hotel, the Wyeth Lodge, 2 towns over. I knew that name. Jeanette had said she was staying there on a networking retreat last month. I'd even driven her there and kissed her goodbye in the parking lot like a loyal husband while she smiled and waved with a duffel bag full of lies. The reservation name matched the lease form, Benjamin Rhodes. I called the hotel, pretending to be a vendor, and asked if Mr. Rhodes had a room booked this week. The front desk agent paused before answering. Yes, he's in 608. Would you like me to connect you? I hung up. I didn't need to talk. I needed to see. I drove there that night. Parked across the street in a lot with a view of the front entrance. I didn't know what I expected. Benji storming out in a trench coat with blueprints under his arm? Jeanette sneaking in with a briefcase and a wig. I was spiraling. But sometimes paranoia is just pattern recognition your brain hasn't caught up with yet. At 9:42 p.m., he appeared. Benji. Same height, same hoodie, same unsettling calm. He wasn't alone. A woman followed him out. Brunette. Confident. Not Jeanette. They weren't lovers. That much was obvious from their body language. No touching, no closeness. This wasn't intimacy. It was business. They got into a rental car. I followed. Not too close. Just enough to keep them in sight as they drove across town to what looked like an abandoned office building. But it wasn't abandoned. The windows were blacked out, but the keypad on the front door lit up when he entered a code. They went inside. I waited. 10 minutes. 20. My fingers gripped the steering wheel until they ached. I couldn't sit still. I walked to the alley, crept behind the building, and found a narrow staircase leading to a side door. It was locked, but above it, there was a window crack just slightly open, too small to fit through, but enough to hear. Voices. Clear. Calm. Too calm. I recognized Jeanette's voice. He's panicking. He sent it to someone else. Benji's voice followed. We expected that. Keep feeding him just enough truth to keep him confused. We don't need him gone. We need him believable. That hit me like a truck. Believable? What did that mean? Then the woman spoke. If he walks into a police station, the story falls apart. He's already emotionally unstable. That's the hook. They weren't just lying to me. They were using me. My pain, my reactions, my every move. All of it was part of something they were building. But what? Benji said something next that I'll never forget. He's not the target. He's the story. And the story needs to feel real. I backed away. Fast. I got in my car and drove for 20 minutes before pulling over and throwing up in a gas station parking lot. Everything made sense now. The surveillance photos, the journals, the manipulation. This wasn't an affair. This wasn't even personal. I was the center of a performance I never auditioned for. And if I didn't flip the script soon, I wouldn't just lose my marriage. I'd lose my identity. The next morning, I woke up on a stranger's couch. A guy named Mason who'd been friends with my brother since high school, someone I hadn't seen in over a decade. Dane had called him, explained the situation in hushed tones, and Mason said without hesitation, "Get him out of town. I've got a place." It was a tiny cabin outside the city, half falling apart, no Wi-Fi, barely working plumbing. But for the first time in days, I slept without flinching at every noise. I spent the next 2 days digging through everything I'd gathered. I cross-referenced Benji's name with real estate licenses, marketing agencies, private security firms. Piece by piece, it came together. They were building a documentary. Not for Netflix. Not for TV. A fake one. Part of a viral campaign to sell a startup tech service that claimed to predict betrayal in relationships using AI and behavioral psychology. I was the case study. The real guy. The test subject. The emotional hook. My life, my marriage, my pain, all weaponized to make their story feel authentic. Jeanette had signed an NDA. Benji was listed as creative director. The woman in the coat? A producer. And the worst part? They'd almost pulled it off. But they underestimated 2 things. That I'd keep going once I found the truth. That I'd tell my version of it before they could. So I did. With help from Dane and a lawyer he trusted, I sent cease and desist letters backed with the evidence. We threatened civil suits, copyright claims, even defamation. We filed a report with the state board overseeing digital media ethics. I uploaded a backup of the data to 3 secure places in case anything happened. Jeanette tried to contact me once after that. Just once. A voice message that said, "You don't understand the bigger picture. We weren't trying to hurt you." I didn't respond. Because here's the thing. Sometimes closure isn't a door swinging shut. It's the moment you realize you don't need to knock anymore. It's been 5 months now. I live in a different city. Smaller. Quieter. I work at a local tile shop, and yeah, I still sell flooring. Still middle. Still ordinary. But now, I own that word. Ordinary means peace. It means no secrets in drawers, no burner phones under desks, no whispered names you aren't supposed to ask about. I even adopted a dog. A mutt from a shelter. He chews everything, hates vacuum cleaners, and sleeps like he's had a harder life than I have. But when he looks at me, I don't feel watched. I feel seen. Some days, I still remember that moment in the bathroom. Jeanette flossing her teeth, saying, "You'll get over it." like she was handing me a Band-Aid for a bullet wound. And you know what? She was wrong. I didn't get over it. I outgrew it.